We are on. Okay.
Perfect.
We did it. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to our show called Perspectives. Our guest tonight is the amazing Malin Burnham. I think he is someone who needs no introduction, but I will let my co-hosts, Alexis and Steve, also just talk a little bit and maybe do an intro.
Yeah. Well, like you said, Amanda, thank you, first of all, for this platform. And before we start, what I want us to do is just acknowledge all the families who are having a really rough time as a result of this pandemic and aren't as fortunate as us to have this opportunity to do some of the things we're doing. And we certainly feel this is a service to community to have Malin on, but we also know that there are families out there who are having a rough time. So I just want to acknowledge them. And Malin, thank you so much for being with us today. How are you doing? And how are you? How are you and your family coming through this?
Well, I keep knocking on wood. Everybody's in good shape. No fevers, no ideas of any danger. We were trying to play by the rules and stay home, stay out of anybody's way. So I have to come up with new ideas to overcome my boredom. But other than that, I'm a team player.
Well, I know you.
I don't think. How would you like to be best introduced? I'm not sure Amanda did that, but you're in some ways the unofficial mayor of San Diego, the founder in some ways, the co-founder in many ways of the USS Midway Museum, the San Diego Foundation, and other things related to that, and of course Caldwell banker and a very strong understanding. Cushman Wakefield, excuse me. Oh, terrible. Of downtown real estate and what's happening with the future and past of San Diego. So go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
No, absolutely. And I'd like to add to that too, the connection. So I had the wonderful opportunity of meeting Malin because of Bella Vista Social Club and Caffe. And Malin was an integral part of the birth of the Sanford Consortium and the collaboratory. And at Bella Vista, you know, you guys are on the menu and you have your titles. And Malin's title is Il Padrino, which is the Godfather. And we'll get into stories. I've got some Malin moments noted. But I think we're just very excited because we really, really, truly look to you as our leader in the city. And so it is an honor to have you here. And we'll go ahead and jump right into some.
Well, and just let me add to that. I'd had the pleasure of working in the nonprofit sector for a number of years. And there was never a time when, whatever, irrespective of the nonprofit, where we would approach Malin, and he wasn't kind and loving with his resources, his information, and just his presence. It wasn't just something transactional where he wanted to just give a resource. It was really critical to him that whatever endeavor he engaged in had meaning and value. And so he always gave of himself. And that was something that I think when we talk of San Diego as being the finest city, it's certainly, that's the kind of giving and the kind of engagement that makes San Diego San Diego's finest city. So Malin, I thank you from the nonprofit sector and all of us whose lives you've touched through your giving of yourself and your resources.
Well, you're all very kind, and I appreciate that very much. I will also say that I was born here, so that's one of the bookends of my life. And the other bookend at the moment is that I'm probably the oldest person that's still active that you know.
Yes.
And as we're all friends.
You know, Malin, did your father live through the 1918 flu? For instance, my father was born in 1893, but he never mentioned it. And he was even in World War I. Did that have an effect on San Diego, or do people even have that long a memory?
You know, that's a good question, and I've lost track of that. It's not in my memory. He came to San Diego in 1905, 1906 with his family. So that was a dozen years later. And I was born another 9 years later. Just to put things in context. So no, the fact is, I have no trace in my history, or my mind at least, of that flu epidemic that we had. But I can't imagine, from what I've read about it and know a little bit about it, it has nothing to compare with where we are today.
Interesting. That's somebody's phone. Malin, you've certainly seen a lot in San Diego, and one of the things I think this virus has introduced us all to is having a new way of engaging with ourselves, our families, and certainly the community. What are you hoping that as a city we come out of this with? What are you hoping that we learn, or what do you see us learning as we try to mitigate and manage ourselves through this?
Well, you've hit on one word that is uppermost in my future, and that's community. And what I'm saying is we need to rebuild the spirit of community in America. I read two wonderful books here in the last 6 months. One is called Them, T-H-E-M, and the other is called Alienated America. And they're recent books, and they both talk about how we've lost the spirit of, not lost, but we've diminished the spirit of community in our societies throughout America. And it's time to rebuild those. And I think this is a wonderful opportunity to take advantage of. We are all working closer together to stay out of harm's way. We're all working to make whatever problems that we have, that we can help people. Well, that's what community is all about, and we need to rebuild that. And that's one of the reasons that I have decided to redo or restart what the San Diego Foundation started some 10 years ago, before I was involved, and they came up with the idea of having a organization within the San Diego Foundation that would advance, not advance, but would engage community. And it never went anywhere. And I think, and I'm not blaming anybody, I was asked a couple years after it started to help finance it, which I did, and therefore my name got involved with it. But basically, I think, and other people think, that a community foundation probably doesn't have the DNA to get involved in public policy matters. And if we're going to move the community, we have to be involved in some of those matters. That's not the main interest. The main interest is to bring people together, from business to nonprofit to whatever it is, and make our community a better place to live, work, and play. So I see the benefits of this catastrophe that we're working our way through is restarting the community aspect for us here throughout the world, but throughout the country, but certainly in San Diego. And we've already started that to reconstitute what will be known as the Burnham Center for Community Advancement, not engagement, but advancement.
It's a good time.
What's the difference in those words for you? What's the distinction between advancement and engagement? Because you made a clear distinction about.
Well, I remember one of the public meetings that, well, they invited a group of 200 people to an auditorium, and it was a wonderful debate and about community life, having to do with the lower income people and people that have been incarcerated, and how do we get them back on their feet. And they had a panel discussion with 5 people on the stage, and then it got into Q&A. And after an hour and a half, the person leading the event looked at the watch and said, "Oh, it's now 5:30. It's time to go for our wine and cheese."
Yeah.
Well, I'm not trying to be critical. I'm just saying, yes, we got together and we talked, but there was no aftermath.
Yes.
And so what we have to do now with engagement is literally to get people engaged, not just for an afternoon or not just for one idea, but to form sub-communities, if you will, and take on issues that will make San Diego a better place to live, work, and play for all of us.
I couldn't agree more, Malin. And I think you and I know I've had a lot of frustrations myself being involved with nonprofits. And as a young entrepreneur, I like to get things done, and I'm very results driven. And I find a lot of times there are events that are hosted and we have great speakers, and we don't need people hosting panels. We need think tanks, and then we need solutions to come from those think tanks. And for, like you're saying, it's not just engagement. Let's advance the people, the underserved that need it the most. They need the nice birds in the background, by the way. But I couldn't agree more. And I think San Diego has talked a lot about collaborating. And now this is really going to put us to the test. And this is our chance. It's our opportunity to come together and to collaborate, not just on the city level, but also on the binational level. You're
Yes.
very passionate about, our two regions, and we've worked together on the concept of Miracle Coast.
Meaning Tijuana and San Diego as two regions for those in other continents.
Yeah, and so I think we're gonna see the true leaders step forward, the ones that aren't just talking, but the ones who really want to see change. So it's an exciting time. We're scared. We're here. We've got a lot on our plates, a lot of anxiety, but it is a time for the leaders to come forward and truly collaborate.
And also in that regard, we need new, younger leaders.
Yes.
So many times in a community, people are a little timid to step up to the plate because they see older people that have been here longer, and so on and so forth. But we're at a stage now where we really need a cadre of younger people in our leadership ranks, especially from a community standpoint. And we're making progress.
And we spoke about that too, about the importance of the next generation of leaders coming up, and we're ready, we're willing, and it's been wonderful. You've been a mentor. I'm going to just skip to one of my favorite Malin moments, was actually when we were first putting together the concept of Miracle Coast, which is a platform of collaboration binationally. And I was so nervous because Malin came in and we had it all set up, and the whiteboard and him sitting at the head of the table. And you said, no, this is your show. And
yes.
You pulled out the chair, and I sat at the head of the table, and I was very intimidated, but it just spoke so much of your character and how you are so gracious with your time, and you're ready for the young leaders to learn and to lead. So that was one of my favorite Malin moments.
Well, you're very kind. Two things that the skills that I've learned and developed over a long period of time that really work for me is that I'm a connector. This program is about connecting different skills, different people, different ideas. And the other thing, the last word I just mentioned is ideas. I like to do a lot of reading about the future and steal other people's comments and ideas and put them to work here in San Diego by forming groups. And I'm not always, in fact, seldom am I the chair or head of any of these projects. I can be in the caboose or in the middle of the ship or wherever. But I'm a good cheerleader.
Yeah, and a team player. So.
And also Sanford-Burnham Prebys has stepped up about the virus. That's been very important. Maybe you could speak to the medical biotech community here. It's amazing in San Diego, and I think it's made a lot of people feel safer that the different hospitals have stepped up and some of the possible cures and some of the approaches are front and center to us. They might be magic and mystery elsewhere in the country, but here we have a thought.
Well, we do have quite a cadre, large cadre of organizations in the health science world with Scripps and Salk and now Sanford-Burnham Prebys are the three largest here as independents in that world, and we all work together. We're all part of the Sanford Consortium for Regenerative Medicine, which includes UCSD and La Jolla Allergy Institute. So we're very open. This is unique. I think I know this consortium is the only of its size, is the only such vehicle in the country. Yeah. And we're making progress, and we're getting ready for another, hopefully in the December ballot, we'll have an opportunity to get another slice of capital to continue the work in stem cell.
Yes. Malin, is that on the 12th that the paperwork needs to be in? We're referring to paperwork for the ballot. I'll check and I'll post.
Yeah. Okay, good.
That's concerning the grant that's going to get on the ballot.
Yes.
What's exciting you that's happening, Malin? What do you see that is giving birth? And maybe it's too early to ask that, but whether it's in biotech, whether it's in your leadership work that you do in the city, what do you see that's unfolding that's exciting to you? Anything that you're seeing, or maybe even just thinking or considering that as a result of this intrusion of this virus is giving you hope for something really exciting to come?
Well, I can't see over the horizon for sure in this way, but I see, because we not only have the quantity, we also have the quality of research here in San Diego, not just in medicine, but in many other ways as well. And all that turns into is innovation, of course. And we are the third largest innovation cluster in the country. And most San Diegans don't even know that. And it was mentioned earlier in this session that I'm involved in another book that will be out in September. And it's called, in essence, the name of it will be Two Countries, Two Communities, two countries, two cities, one community. And the one community is San Diego, Tijuana, and all the things that we do together. It's if you got up 10,000 feet in the air and looked down on the border, you wouldn't see the so-called line in the sand. You'd see this one big community of 6.5 million people. Well, it's the maquiladora industry has really made the economics of all of this very, very beneficial to both sides, to both communities, to both countries. For instance, a typical maquiladora plant will have its administration, will have its developers, its scientists, the financing, the marketing, and all will be on the San Diego side. And the building of the product will be on the Mexican side because of favorable labor rates, of course. But there's an awful lot of talent down in Tijuana from a standpoint of manufacturing.
Right.
They build more television sets in Tijuana than anywhere else in the world. They build more medical insert devices that all most all of it coming into the American market than anywhere else in the world. I can go on, but that's why Alan Burson and I got together and said, we ought to promote this kind of a book and tell ourselves what we have, because most San Diegans and Tijuanans don't know all of these answers. And it will also be, hopefully, a good primer for other border communities, not only Mexican and U.S. communities along the border all the way to Texas, but other places in the world, how two countries and two different styles can get together and benefit each other. So that's what the book will be about. But again, that's part of San Diego's domain. And it's all talking about community that we've emphasized on this session here today. So I'm very optimistic about the future growth of our area, our binational community, and the talent that we have is growing all the time, and that's It's people, it's ideas, it's energy, and it's community.
Do you think there'll have to be a lifting of both wall and COVID concerns to reunite the two sides? It was the busiest border in the world, and it's gone a little bit tighter lately.
Well, it's still the busiest. And I think it can always be managed smoother.
Yeah.
But then politics get involved, and they sometimes put a little more sand in the wheels.
So to speak.
Yes, but no, I think that there's a lot of pride in both countries. I don't see the wall ever being built, but I don't see the fence and the portals coming down either. We both have our own interests, a primary interest, and it's just a matter of being more efficient in the crossings. One of my cohorts, Steve Williams, he took my part of the Coalition for a Smart Border Coalition. He's a co-chair with a counterpart from the Tijuana side, which I was when we started this about 12 years ago. He did a little arithmetic. And if you put all of the 18-wheeler semi-trucks loaded with merchandise made in Tijuana and cross the border one after another, or park them on the highway bumper to bumper, it would be a 35-mile stretch of semi-trucks. That's how much merchandise is being built daily and transported to San Diego, for the American. Just a little, for instance, Toyota have a plant down there, and they build nothing but pickup trucks. Every pickup truck you see on the road in this country came from there. Right. And there's something in the order of over 300,000 being built each year, Toyota trucks in the Tijuana area.
And turbines, right? So you have, I think it was Toyota, was it Sony? That was one of the other companies that was down there?
Yes, they're
turbines.
Part of the television world down there, yes. So.
And it's good that we have that $300 million sewer plant that's being made. That's an example of joint progress that'll free up the surf in Imperial Beach. Not that anybody's surfing at the moment.
Yes. Yeah, and there's also talk about building a large water plant, converting seawater to fresh water, which, if it's going to be built large enough, they could export some water over to our side from time to time in cases of emergency or so on and so forth. So there are a lot of good connections.
Great connection, lots of synergy. And I think too, I know I do work down in Tijuana, you do work down in Tijuana. There's days where I run to the cafe, get my kid to school, and then I'm down there for appointments. And there's just so much back and forth. Medical tourism is another thing that, well, actually, I don't know if it's shut down because of the borders right now, but there's so many industries, not just manufacturing, where there's this.
Well, you're going down to the wineries of the valley down there.
Oh my God. Okay, that's really why I want the borders to open up. Yes, I want to go back to Valle de Guadalupe. I mean, that's a beautiful space, especially for people in my industry, in the restaurant world, and creatives, right? Because what they've done down there is absolutely incredible. And again, it's just getting the word out and getting people comfortable with realizing that it's safe to go back and forth.
It is. People ask me constantly in San Diego, is it safe to go into Mexico, Baja? And here's my response. I looked at them in the eyes and I said, "Are you in the drug world?" "Oh, no, not at all." I said, "Then it's perfectly safe. The murders are because the cartels are shooting each other. They don't care about shooting us. We don't count. They want to get rid of their competition. And that's part of the murders."
Malin, I want to bring it back to San Diego for a moment, because I love your word community. And I think the virus has really invited us, and it's very much a portal, a doorway for us to really appreciate each other. With the virus has essentially pushed us away from each other physically, and yet here we are in community with each other through this piece of technology. The other thing so what I'd like to kind of ask you is that, certainly the virus has an impact globally, but here in San Diego, and again, across the nation, it's impacted people differently because of their economic status. And so there are people who's, by virtue of nothing other than their economic ability or economic status, don't have the ability to do what seems to be normal for us to do. I mean, we're very fortunate, the four of us. What would you like to see from a policy point of view that we do to create greater equity in San Diego, socially, economically, healthcare-wise, and those sorts of things? What can we do to create more equity in our city?
Well, it's a good question, great question, and it's a deep question. I see this is, of course, a first of a kind, the scope of it financially as to what's happening in this country. But look, the government has ordered certain businesses to stop being in business. Restaurants, or collect people, like our hostess here this evening, and so on and so forth. Well, for instance, how's it going to affect real estate? I've been in the real estate world, as you know, and many of my investments are in real estate. I've got some properties in Texas, and one of them has 3 restaurants in the building. They're all closed. They're not paying rent. So the stimulus package put together, $2 trillion, which I can't even pronounce the size of it, is a new game in town. I think what's going to happen is that people with mortgages on their properties that can't pay the mortgage, or the banks are going to, I don't want to say be forced, but the banks are going to cooperate and count the number of months that the payments weren't made, and hopefully add that amount on to the back of the mortgage, not add it to the current, but add it to the back of the mortgage, and show some real cooperation and community, as we've been talking about, because it's nobody's fault in particular, but if we want to save lives, we've got to jump on this thing as fast as possible, and that's why it's expensive. So it's a learning process. We're going to learn a lot out of this. I don't know what the final answer is going to be, but I see a lot of cooperation going on the lending side as well.
Right. I agree. One of the main concerns of my employees when we shut down, they're like, well, how am I going to pay rent? How am I going to pay rent? And a lot of the meetings we were in with the businesses that had to shut down, that was the same question. And I said, we just have to take, right now it's not about money. It's not about economics. It's about saving lives. And we'll find a way. Don't worry about rent. Just concentrate on being healthy, being there for your family. And we're all going to work together. So it is incredible how people are working together. You know, a lot of my employees that are now unemployed, they're getting grace periods for rent. So that's huge. And that pressure has been taken off.
That's an astounding policy decision by many places and all over the country. And same with, I help somebody with like a Toyota car payment there. It's tacked on to the end. I noticed they kept the interest in the meantime, but still, that takes a breather away from somebody who's living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah, we're living in new eras today. This is the extent of this, the danger, the depth of this, the size of this, we've never experienced before. So it's a whole new ball game, and I feel very good about the cooperation from all sides so far.
It's tricky down there at the USS Midway, right? When that virus, when the medical word came out that a hard surface would be a place for the virus to live. I mean, the USS Midway, a major aircraft carrier of the past, is all hard surfaces, not to mention the great older people who work there. So that was tricky, but all these symbolic things will come back to San Diego with a boom, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they will.
Are you optimistic?
I'm always, Alexis, I'm always optimistic. this world is one of a kind. I'm always looking to help on new ideas, new concepts, new anything, to make the world a better place to live, work, and play. And well, yes, we're going to get through this. It's going to take longer than any of us would like, but there's an end result, and we're going to learn new science, research as well, that will help other diseases and other episodes in the future. So it's not all bad. And I'm very, very pleased the way everybody is turning, to help and be cooperative. That's a great American virtue.
What do you miss most about your freedom? What do you miss most about your external self? You're a very external person. You're out and about, you're doing things in the community, you're going here, you're going there, people are coming to visit you. I've had the pleasure of sitting with you in your office and speaking with you. I mean, you are an external person. what do you miss most about?
It's currently been an adjustment for all of us. The first couple of weeks, I was bored. I was kind of twisting my mind and my body, and what's happening here, and I couldn't figure it out, and I still can't. But here's a tip for all of us. If you like to read, and I would like to read books, and by the way, I'm interested in life. 3 things: tomorrow, a year from tomorrow, and 10 years from tomorrow. Those are my main interests in life. So I read books accordingly that have ideas from people from different countries even. And a couple of 3 years ago, when we have a home down in Cabo, we have a little library down there because I take some books and read. Well, I didn't take enough books that one trip. So I went into my little library and I pulled out a couple of books that I hadn't read in probably 8 or 10 years. And I found out in both cases that I learned more the second time of reading the book than I did the first time.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I remembered that until 2 weeks ago. I said, hey, I've got some books here in my library and I can borrow from other friends. So I am rereading books. And that is what is keeping my mind active and thinking and learning. And so I give a little tip to people that ought to do the same thing. Maybe it's whatever it is that you've done before, don't think that you can't do it again.
I agree completely. And if you just watch the news all the time, you'll be anxious all the time.
There's too much of the same thing in the news.
That's right.
Which is why we created this platform too, to stay connected, but also to give a sense of hope, because that's really what's going to get us through this is community and connection. We call this our collective genius, and hope, sharing hope with each other. Most definitely.
It's interesting how you speak about reading books a second time, because I know I've read your first book and you and I've spent a little time together. And one of the things I've taken away from you, and actually I quote you quite a bit, particularly on this subject, is the ability to pivot. And I want you to talk a little bit about that. You've always talked, and when I've sat with you for the hour or a few times we've met in your office, you always talked about the ability to pivot and what that means and the value of doing that when things are uncertain or when you see that you need to make a change. So can you talk a little bit about the value of pivoting?
Sure. Let me start. When I was 17 years old, I did my first pivot. I didn't know what the word meant for a number of years thereafter. And it turned out that I had graduated from high school, Oklahoma High School, in June of 1945, and the war was going on. And I was one of the youngest of all my classmates. All my buddies went into the Navy, and I planned to go in the Navy. Well, on August 15th, 1945, the war was over. And my dad said, "You're going to Stanford." And I said, wait a minute. I'm going in the Navy with all my buddies. And he said, no, I have made arrangements with a friend of mine who's a big Stanford booster in Los Angeles to get you, you're already accepted. I said, what are you talking about, Dad? And I'd been gone for 10 days and I was getting back from a trip. And he said, well, he says, you know, today there are 7 or 8 women to every man on campus because the men are out fighting in the war. So I was asked, so my dad said, he was asked one question, how are my grades? And my dad said, they're okay. And he says, I'll get him in. And I never made application. I never submitted grades. I was literally a walk-on. And so that was my first pivot in life. But I've been pivoting all my life. As a real estate guy, I still tell people that they ought to do this. When you go from point A to point B, and you come back, and you're going to come back after you hit point B to point A where you started, go one way and come back another. Why? Because you see twice as much real estate. And so pivoting, I've always thought, because of the start that I just gave you, I've always thought of pivoting to be very positive, where a lot of people think, oh my gosh, I just got this system working and now the pivot comes and I got to move it over here. Hey, buddy, that's life. And you can do better over there than you can over here. A lot of people think going down a road and all of a sudden, if they think they need to go 45 degrees left, that they're admitting a mistake. No, they're not. They see a better way to go where they need to go. So pivoting is positive. And we'll be doing a lot of pivoting because of this virus.
Is there a particular pivot you'd like to see us take? If you had to give us a sequencing of 1, 2, 3, if you were mayor or president for the day, let's say mayor of the city, what would be the top 3 things you would do to really ease the distress of the community?
Well, certainly the building all kinds of communities, and talking residential, for different purposes, for families, for kids, for health, whatever it is certainly, I think, my number one thought that we need to do in this country. But leadership is something that also needs to be addressed very, very seriously. And we need, the first thing we need to think about is expanding our interest. It's not the block, it's the whole community that might be 100 homes, might be the whole county, and so on and so forth. I think that education is constantly changing. And with this type of equipment that we're using here tonight, there are advantages that can be learned. I don't see us going to full-time 100% to the video type things. People ask me, what was the best thing I learned at Stanford University? And I got a degree in industrial engineering. But I constantly tell everybody the best thing I learned was how to get along with people. It was a community. And that was my best education in the world that I ever had. So I think those things are going to be more important. When we think about leadership, I was part of an effort 15 years ago by a public vote to change the makeup of City Hall. And to have a so-called strong mayor who sits on one side of the building, not a part of the city council where the mayor used to be, the chair of the city council. Now both sides think that they're running the city, and the fact is neither of them are doing a good job. And so I admit that I thought that was a good thing, which we did 15 years ago, but I'm prepared to go back to having the mayor be elected citywide and be the chair of the city council and have them get along and do things together that they're not doing nearly as well as they could or should do. So I think that's terribly important. Uh, Another thing that San Diego needs to correct is an inferiority complex that we still have in this community. For instance, there are Forbes magazine puts out every year, among other things, and so does Fortune and others. And there's a Fortune 500 of the largest companies in the United States. We have 2 of those in San Diego. The last time I looked, Cincinnati had either 7 or 8 of the largest 500 companies in America. If you took a poll on the streets of San Diego, I would bet you that 50% of the people don't know what state Cincinnati is in. And yet they have an inferiority complex. There's still matrons, I'm told, in Rancho Santa Fe that still go up to Orange County to buy their gowns and get their hair done. I had a personal situation about 5 years ago when I went to a neurologist to try to figure out why my hips were getting, why my leg muscles weren't reacting as they used to. And he finally decided that the nerve system coming down my backbone into my leg muscles was being interfered with because of the arthritis in my hips. So I said, what do we do? And he says, well, I think it's time to see a surgeon, a hip surgeon. And I said, well, can you give me some references? And he said, yeah, he was prepared. He gave me 2 names, one from San Francisco and one in La Jolla. Literally, I was upset. I don't have to go, you don't have to go to San Francisco to get a hip replacement. I didn't explode to him. I was calm, but I was upset. And that attitude, I didn't take the name or anything else or the telephone number of the San Francisco chap, but I've had both hips done and they came out from the same doctor here, 100%. I didn't have them done at the same time, one after another. So we've got an inferiority complex still here in the greater San Diego area that we've got to overcome. So, and we've got the talent, we've got the assets. We have to market them better, and so on and so forth.
You think the city is going to explode in a good way with the trolley system, the moving of the university UCSD downtown, the new Seaport Village extravaganza, the Horton Plaza changing a bit into a high-tech place? I mean, in 5 years after we recover from the virus and that, it does seem like there's going to be major changes for centering San Diego in the US, if not the world.
Well, I didn't set you up for this question, but I can answer it in a way that I happen to be involved. You mentioned UCSD is acquiring a office building that's under construction downtown San Diego on the corner of Park Boulevard and Market Street. 4 stories, 60,000 square feet. It's not going to be a classroom building. They are doing this because it's on a polyline, so it can hook up to their campus, of course. But it will be a meeting place to bring people together, communities again together. And it's so turned out that I was invited to consider establishing the Burnham Center for community advancement, and we in that facility.
Okay.
And that is what is in process of happening. And there will be it's not for the whole building. None of the building is for classrooms. There will be all kinds of lectures. There will be art shows. There will be special talks. It's all about building the community, and it will be, backed up by UCSD and a lot of other people. And within now the building is being called the U, meaning you, and you. So the center, the Burnham Center for for Community Advancement will be there. And we will get together with people, organizations like EDC and all kinds of other organizations that will come together under that kind of format of community and work things together. Look at, for instance, Balboa Park. It's a disgrace, and everybody in Balboa Park agrees, but they can't come together and put a management team together or a program together. Well, this center could do those kind of things because we get people from all different interests coming together, and we know what the problem is. It's leadership, and it's management control, which is all in City Hall, and it's got to come out of City Hall.
Well, that's a beautiful park. It'll be a great city with that added, integration that you're talking about.
Yeah, no question. It's a shame, and I've talked to hundreds of people literally in the last 4 years, and I believe without any question we could go to the ballot anytime and get at least $1 billion bond issue passed to restore Balboa Park.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've had not one person tell me that it was a crazy idea. So
awesome.
Well, I just wanted to know, I think pivoting, I too read your book, and I actually read your book when I was in Cabo a few years back. And I also loved your message. Well, first, exercising every day, because I think our bodies are our temples. So I love in your leadership that you addressed health and wellness. I think that's very important. But going back to pivoting, I agree. I've had a pivot in shutting down my business. I had to figure out what I was going to do to remain of service and have a purpose and keep the community together. And I think when you're talking about institutions and leadership, like our government, that's one concern, is how do we have leaders in place that also have that know-how to pivot and be agile. So that's something we're going to look for in future leaders. I know we're running out of time. I just want to make sure, do we have a few minutes left with you, Malin? Is that okay? A few minutes, maybe.
Sure.
Okay. And maybe we'll invite you back on the show again.
It's pre-cocktail hour here at the Burnham home.
Oh, okay. So then we'll have to do a virtual sunset happy hour with you someday. I also wanted to chime in about the project downtown and the transformation that's going to happen there. I think what UCSD is doing and finally reaching out to the community a little further south, it's going to be a great opportunity for us to see all those stakeholders come together and once again finally be at the table, a circular table, and collaborating and coming up with programs that really are going to be put into action and change lives, because that's what we're really here to do, is to make everyone's life a little brighter and a little better.
Well, we'll have to put Pradeep on the show then.
Yes.
Oh.
Right.
All right, I'm gonna email coming to Pradeep very soon. I know next week we're gonna have our council member Barbara Bree is going to be on next week. Sci-fi writer David Brin is coming on. Another local, Brian Keating, will be talking to us. We mentioned that earlier. So lots of great minds are coming on to speak and share, and like we said, be part of this collective genius on this platform. But I don't know if there's
shout out to the mayor and to Todd Gloria. We'll cover the bases. Tony Atkins.
Cover the bases.
I think Amanda wants Tony Atkins in a bathrobe. I'm sure the voters would like that.
We're gonna have so much fun. I did have one question. A friend wrote in. He's now on the East Coast. He's Michael Galasso, and he's a real estate guy. And he had a question for you regarding affordable housing. So I know this is a concern for many people, especially. Once again, I have employees that are paid hourly and they live paycheck to paycheck, and housing costs is just obscene in San Diego. So could you speak to affordable housing, or any ideas or solutions you have about affordable housing, and with us all being stuck with no income being generated?
Well, you know, it's first of all, it's all about economics. Um, this, and by the way, I'm not involved in any projects of this nature. I don't know what the answer is for affordable housing. It may have to be more government underwriting, and which I don't like, but nevertheless, I was witnessing a panel discussion at UCSD about 3 years ago, and it was the Burnham-Moores Center for Real Estate was sponsoring this, and they had 5 local people in the real estate industry, from brokers to shopping center managers to whatever, and so on and so forth. And one of the people there made a point on affordable housing, and they say, you know, nobody in San Francisco can afford to live there anymore. Yeah. And I said to myself, wait a minute, they've got 100% occupancy, and you're saying nobody can afford to live in San Francisco? So there's a lot of emotion involved, but it's an economic situation, and somehow we've got to get the cost of building, the cost of maintenance down. Certainly regulations and all the things we have to go through to get a building permit can be smoothed out. I was involved with the Burnham Institute building a laboratory building in Orlando 15, 16 years ago. And they had they have a city hall where you go in and for a building permit, and they guarantee you'll get a building permit in 90 days. Now, all of the departments that have to, the engineering and zoning and everything is in one building. So somebody walks the application through and so on and so forth. Well, we can do that here if we want to, but government so far doesn't want to. So I don't know. I think we're going to have some government assistance on some of these things, and I guess there are other ways of doing it, but it's a concern that we have to go for. Another solution is, in many neighborhoods you can put a 1-bedroom little house in the backyard,
Right.
or in other places on church properties that they got excess property and things like that. That could also be a partial solution to the cost of housing, and especially for single people, but certainly couples without children could be in these smaller houses. And yes, you don't put those in the middle of La Jolla or Point Loma or places, Rancho Santa Fe, but there are places where you can put these small bungalows. As a matter of fact, when I was in high school with a contractor, a friend of my father's, I built my first house. It was a 400 square foot house down in Logan Heights area. And there was a redwood, I hadn't thought of this for a long time, it was a redwood batten board walls, and single car garage, and 400 square feet. So it can be done. So we have to, but somebody has to the community has to get together and do it. That's the answer.
Oh, Malin,
We're ready.
All right.
you have a lot of work to do, so take care of yourself because you've got a lot ahead of you, buddy.
Well, thank you.
Thank
you. I don't.
Great to see you, if digitally.
Well, it's
Virtually.
it's obviously important to have friends like you all and teammates like you all. And any ideas you have from time to time, don't hesitate to ping me. And we're all in this together. It's teamwork. So thank you very much for having me on the program, Miranda.
Thank you so much. And I just wanted to touch again that we're excited for your book to come out. I want to throw the giant party when we celebrate a book signing. But it was a pleasure to learn about your new book. And you mentioned a little bit about the journey of how we started the relationship with San Diego and south of the border, and he walked me through like highlight. It was such a fun meeting. So hopefully we could dip into that a bit more the next time we have you on. And I just wanted to leave with my other favorite Malin moment, and that was you and I cutting a rug at Denny Sanford's birthday. So he not only is an amazing leader, this man can dance, okay? He's got some incredible moves. So
well, Roberta doesn't always think I'm a good dancer, but she's a good dancer.
She was good. She's good. I think she was cutting a rug too. So
Give them the wings.
you're just so well-rounded, and it's such a pleasure just having you as a mentor and having you as someone for all of us to count.
Well, you're very nice. One last thing, one last thought. We all need to have goals. We really do need to think about what we want to accomplish. Not just tomorrow, but I like to think, as I said earlier here, a year from tomorrow and 10 years from tomorrow. So having goals is important. On my 80th birthday, in front of 250 of our nice friends, we had music, we had videos, we had all musicians and so on and so forth. It was a beautiful party. Happened to be on the hangar deck of the Midway.
Yeah.
And at the end of the evening, finally, the microphone came around to me, and I said three things. I said, well, first of all, thank you, all my friends, for being here and helping me celebrate my 80th. Next, I thanked my lovely wife, Roberta, for putting up with me all these years. And I'll get back to that one because that was really the third one. The second one was that I said that all of you people that are still upright on my 100th birthday, I'll take you to the moon. So that was point number 2. But now point number 3 was what I said to Roberta, to thank her for her love and our marriage. And here I'm hereby promising you another 25 years. Period.
Deal.
There's
All
something to that. I don't mean it's mystic, and I don't, but if you think far ahead, you do far ahead. You can't get there otherwise.
That's a perspective.
Okay, thank you.
And that's a perspective. I like it. We love you. Thank you so much, Malin.
All right.
Thank you. From
Well,
my
thank
heart.
you for doing what you're doing, and we'll get this virus behind us and move our community where it should be, higher and faster.
You bet. All right.
All right.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ciao. Bye-bye.